Hi everyone. So today we're talking about the pons. So the pons is basically the middle of the brainstem, and what it does is it connects the cerebellum up to the cerebrum and down to the spinal cord through the midbrain and through the medulla. So let's take a look at where the pons is at. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a brain real quick, and I'm going to draw my cerebellum. And remember, the cerebellum hangs like a bell off of the back of the brain. Okay, so there's my cerebellum. And we'll talk about the cerebellum in another video, but basically the cerebellum's responsible for fine-tuning movements and for posture and helping you maintain your balance and things such as that. But we'll talk about this in another video. So in my brainstem, this is your brainstem right here, and the top part of the brainstem is called the midbrain, which we've done a video on. So that's the midbrain. This is the pons right here, and if you notice, the pons has an enlargement right there, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. Then down here we have the medulla oblongata. And basically the medulla oblongata, which we'll have a video on that also, is going to connect the brain to the spinal cord, right? So it's at the bottom of the brainstem. So these three here make up our brainstem, okay? Now, here's the thing, is the reason you have that enlargement there is because I have so many nerves that are coming from the brain and down into the cerebellum, or coming up from the spinal cord and going into the cerebellum, or nerves that are coming out of the cerebellum that may go back up to the cerebrum, or nerves that are coming out of the cerebellum and going back down. Plus then, I just have nerves that just pass through this area in general and don't even go to the cerebellum. So you can see that's why this becomes larger, simply because of all the nerves that I have going there. So let's take another look at what the pons does. And I'm actually going to draw this a little bit bigger. Okay, so I'm going to draw it like this, and let's go like this. Okay, and so there's the pons. This is the midbrain. This is going to be the medulla oblongata. I'm not going to deal too much with what's back here now, the cerebellum. So if you recall, when we were talking about the midbrain, we said in the midbrain we had a cranial nerve, and we called it cranial nerve number 3, which we call the oculomotor nerve, if you recall, right? And we said what the oculomotor does, it's responsible for moving of the eye up and down and in and up and out and constricting your pupils and things such as that. Then we said below that we had what we call the trochlear nerve. So this was cranial nerve number 4. Right? We called this the trochlear nerve. We said the trochlear nerve is responsible for one muscle, and it pulls the eye down and out. And now we are going to go into the pons. So if this is cranial nerve 3, the oculomotor nerve, and this is cranial nerve 4, which was the trochlear nerve, but we have 3, 4. Obviously, the next one is going to be cranial nerve number 5. Okay, and this is not the exact location of it in the pons, but just to make it easier to see. So we have cranial nerve number 5, okay? We call this one the trigeminal nerve. And the reason it's called the trigeminal nerve is because of the fact that it's gonna have 3 branches coming over it. Now, I'm not gonna go too much into the cranial nerves here. I'm kind of more interested in just showing you where they are and telling you what those parts of the brainstem do. But basically, the trigeminal nerve is going to do the motor portion of it. And remember, the motor means it moves muscle or controls muscle. It does the muscles of mastication. And what the muscles of mastication are your chewing muscles. All right, so those are going to be our chewing muscles, right? And then it's also going to be basically all the sensation, the sensory portion of this, is basically going to be sensation to the face. Okay, so after the trigeminal nerve, we get the 6th cranial nerve, which we call the abducens. So it's cranial nerve number 6. Now, we did talk about this when we were going over the midbrain, because remember, the superior colliculus actually sent nerves down to the 3rd, 4th, and 6th cranial nerve. So this is, I'm going to move this over just a little bit. And this is cranial nerve 6, and we call this the abducens nerve. And basically, abducens nerve controls the muscle called the lateral rectus. Okay, the abducens nerve does not do anything that has to do with sensory. It's not a sensory, but the lateral rectus is going to move my eye away from my nose. So if you remember in the third cranial nerve, we said that the medial rectus moves my eye toward my nose. So my medial rectus and my lateral rectus work together to move my eye to the side, right? Or if I want to look to the side. So that's going to be the lateral rectus. That's what's going to control. It moves the eye laterally. Okay, so that's cranial nerve 6. Then we have cranial nerve 7. Cranial nerve 7 is known as our facial nerve. Okay, so the motor for cranial nerve 7 is it's going to help us make facial expressions. Okay, the other thing it does is it controls muscles in the middle ear. And the reason you have muscles in the middle ear is because of the fact that if noise are too loud, those muscles actually contract, and they basically decrease the vibrations of the eardrum, so that way you won't get ear damage from it. The facial nerve is also going to play a role in your lacrimal glands. Your lacrimal glands are going to produce tears. Right? It controls 2 salivary glands. Okay. Oh, and it does taste to the anterior 2/3 of the tongue. Okay, so these are some of the functions of the facial nerve. Again, the point of this video is not to go into what every cranial nerve does. But then, way down here, we have our 8th cranial nerve. So this is cranial nerve number 8. And cranial nerve number 8, cranial nerve number 8 is going to be responsible, or it's called the auditory nerve, or the vestibular cochlear nerve. And basically what this does is, this is just sensory. It's going to be responsible for hearing, like the name says, hearing, and for helping you keep your balance. Okay, so these are some of the functions that happen in the pons. Now, some other things that happen in the pons. The pons is also responsible for your respiration. All right, you have respiration centers in your pons. So basically it's responsible for your breathing rate, so the rate of your respirations, right? It's also responsible for the depth of your respirations. Okay, how deep you breathe. And then the last thing that we're going to go over is the pons also plays a role. The pons also plays a role in generating dreams, and it actually plays a role in sleep paralysis. And if you wonder what sleep paralysis is, that's when people feel like they're awake, but they can't breathe and they can't move any body parts. And so basically they're asleep and they're paralyzed. So it plays a role in sleep paralysis. Okay, so once again, so the pons is going to be responsible for nerves going up, nerves going down, nerves that go back to the cerebellum, which I don't have drawn here, nerves that come from the cerebellum and go down and go up, right? So that's why you get this bulge here. Pons actually means bridge, right? It's going to be responsible for, or it contains the nuclei of these nerves here. It's going to be responsible for my respiration rate and my depth of respiration, generating dreams, and it plays a role in sleep paralysis. So that's it for the pons. Thank you very much for watching.